In the same suburban neighborhood of a typical American city stand two almost identical apartments. In the first one, the keys to a 2017 Toyota Corolla, paid for in cash 4 years ago, hang on a small hook beside the door. In the kitchen, a slow cooker quietly bubbles with a soup prepared for the week, and on the table lies a brokerage account statement that the owner last checked 6 months ago when increasing monthly contributions. The sofa here is not new but comfortable, bought on Facebook Marketplace for a third of its cost. The 2019 television was a gift from an employer for 5 years of service. On the refrigerator is a magnet reading 401k plus 1% and a calendar where the first of every month has been checked off since 2019. The owner of this apartment, Marcus, a 6-year-old analyst, last looked at his investment portfolio 6 months ago when he increased automatic contributions by 1%. In the second apartment, a box for a premium $3,800 espresso machine, bought on Black Friday but never unpacked, immediately catches the eye. Near the door lies a stack of boxes with returns for Amazon. On the phone, notifications from Robinhood flash about falling stocks, and beneath them is a parking receipt for $47 a day because the $22 parking was too far, a 6-minute walk away. On a sofa bought on a 2-4-month credit plan lies empty packaging from delivered sushi, and in the kitchen is a receipt for a food order for a week ahead. The owner of this apartment, Derek, of the same age and position, has been avoiding checking his credit card balance for the fourth month, feeling a slight sense of shame. Both earn almost the same. Marcus makes $87,000 a year, and Derek makes $89,000. But when Marcus opens his investment account, there is $340,000 in it. Derek has $11,000 and a monthly car payment of $780 that he tries not to think about. The difference is not in salary, but in the system of habits that one consciously built while the other ignored. The myth of the magic strategy: why you are looking in the wrong place. Financial gurus and the media have convinced us for years that wealth is a matter of luck, a genius investment, or the right time to enter. But a study by Ramsey Solutions, involving 10,000 American millionaires who built their fortune from scratch, showed a completely different picture. 79% of those surveyed did not receive a cent of inheritance. Their capital was the result of their own actions, not a fortunate birth. A third of them never earned six-figure sums a year, and their professions were very ordinary: engineer 22% and accountant 18%. The average time it took them to accumulate their first $1 million was 28 years, not through genius investments or risky deals, but through the monotonous repetition of a few simple financial habits, while compound interest did all the work. These people did not look for a secret strategy. They simply did for years what 99% of people consider too boring to even try. They automatically set aside part of their income, avoided debt, lived below their means, and invested the difference. Their success did not depend on the size of their salary, market conditions, or luck, only on discipline and time. Habit 1. Automation of savings: how to trick your brain and win. Theodora Jenkins worked as a school janitor her whole life in a small town in the southern U.S. Her salary was modest, and from the outside, she seemed like an ordinary person. Simple clothes, an old house, and a very modest lifestyle. No, she had one habit that almost no one knew about. Jenkins regularly set aside part of her salary and invested the money in shares of large, stable companies. She did not try to guess the market and did not follow the news every day. She simply bought assets and held them for decades, allowing dividends to accumulate. When she died at the age of 89, it turned out that her investment portfolio was worth more than $6 million. She bequeathed most of this money to local schools and educational foundations. This case illustrates an important principle of wealth accumulation. Our brain is programmed for instant gratification, and when a person has to decide every time whether to spend money now or set it aside, discipline often loses to desires. A 2025 Vanguard study showed that in retirement plans with automatic participation, 94% of employees actually save money. In voluntary participation plans, where one must independently decide on contributions, this figure drops to 64%. The difference almost disappears when savings become automatic rather than depending on monthly willpower. In practice, this means the following. Imagine two people with the same salary of $60,000 a year. One immediately sets up automatic investing of 10% of their income. The second decides every month how much to set aside and often sets aside less or misses contributions. After 30 years at a return of about 10%, the first can accumulate approximately $1.1 million, while the second about $600,000, $700,000. The difference arises not because of a more complex strategy, but because the system works automatically and does not depend on mood or willpower. To apply this principle, open a separate investment account, set up an automatic transfer of 10-15% of your salary to this account on the day you receive it, and choose a low-cost index fund. For the first few months, you may feel a slight sense of loss, but over time you will get used to it and notice that the capital gradually grows on its own. Habit 2. The car is not status, but a financial pit. The average monthly payment for a new car in the US in 2026 is $748. This amount seems tolerable because dealers offer to stretch the loan over 6, 7, or even 10 years. But what actually happens in this case? A car loses about 50% of its value in the first 3 years, and by the 5th year of a long loan, you may still owe the bank more than the car is worth. At this point, many people simply trade in the car, roll the remaining debt into a new loan, and the cycle begins again. Manufacturers and banks know this psychology perfectly. The buyer thinks about the monthly payment, not the total price. Therefore, a $35,000 car easily turns into $50,000, $55,000 with interest and fees. Imagine two people starting their careers at age 25. The first buys a new car on credit and pays about $700, $800 a month. The second buys a used car for $12,000, $15,000, and drives it for 6-7 years without a loan. The difference in monthly expenses is approximately $500, $600. If the second person invests this difference in an index fund, after 30 years, they could accumulate more than $1 million. And all this is created not thanks to high income, but thanks to one repeated decision: not to turn a car into a debt trap. There is a simpler example. Two colleagues receive the same salary of $60,000 a year. One takes a new car on credit every 4 years, the other buys a reliable used one and drives it longer. After 20 years, the first may have several paid-off cars but almost no investments. The second, during this time, may have accumulated a portfolio worth several $100,000. The difference is not in talent or luck. The difference is in where the money goes every month. This doesn't mean you have to give up a car entirely. It means that the car should be a tool, not a status symbol. A sensible approach is to buy a 2 to 3-year-old car, drive it longer, and avoid long loans. If you cannot afford to pay off a car in a short period, you are likely buying a car you cannot afford. Real wealth is built not on expensive purchases, but on how much money you leave to work for your future. Habit 3. Restaurants eat not only your budget, but your future. Let's compare two neighbors, Marcus and Derek. Marcus cooks at home 5 times a week and spends about $80 a week on groceries. Derek orders delivery 4 times a week, goes to restaurants on Fridays, and buys lunches at cafes every day because packing food is an extra 15 minutes. As a result, Derek spends $900 a month on food, while Marcus spends $420. The difference of $480 a month, invested at 10% per annum over 25 years, turns into $630,000. And the most interesting thing is that Derek doesn't even feel these expenses as a serious problem. They simply dissolve into everyday small payments. But it is precisely such invisible habits that create a huge difference in financial results over time. Research shows that millionaires spend 2 times less on eating out than on groceries, while the average American does the opposite. Restaurant food costs 4, 5 times more than home cooked food. One dish in a slow cooker costs $1, 2, while a similar one in a restaurant costs $15, 20. Food delivery hits the budget doubly. The food itself is more expensive, plus the delivery fee, 15–20%, and tips for the courier. Furthermore, regular orders often lead to impulsive purchases, desserts, drinks, and extra dishes that increase the check even more. To apply this habit, start by planning a menu for the week. Spend 30 minutes on Sunday to plan dishes, and an hour on Monday to buy groceries. A slow cooker or pressure cooker will become your financial ally. It cooks food while you are at work, and one portion costs $1, 2 instead of $15 in a cafe. Start with the 2 out of 3 rule. Cook at home 5 times a week, leaving 2 days for eating out. Savings of $500 a month will turn into $600,000 in your account in 30 years. This is one of those habits where a small effort today can lead to a huge financial result in the future. Habit 4. The house is not an investment, but a potential prison. Banks approve loans for houses that eat up to 50% of your income, but that doesn't mean you can afford them without financial stress. A family with an income of $100,000 that spends 25% on housing instead of 35% frees up $10,000 a year. This money, invested at 10% per annum for 30 years, will turn into $1.8 million. Moreover, the difference in the size of the house often hardly affects the quality of life, but it radically affects financial freedom. The smaller the share of income that goes to housing, the more space you have for investment, savings, and peace of mind. Many mistakenly consider a large house an investment, but in reality, it often becomes a financial prison. A large house means higher property taxes, expensive insurance, large heating bills, repairs, and maintenance. Thomas Stanley's research showed that true wealth accumulators live in neighborhoods where they are not the richest, choosing houses that leave them a financial cushion. Those who look rich often have luxurious houses and almost nothing else. From the outside, their life may seem successful, but behind the facade of an expensive house, constant financial tension is often hidden. When buying a home, follow the rule. The house should cost no more than 2.5 times your annual income. If you earn $80,000, the maximum is $200,000. This will allow you not only to comfortably pay off the mortgage, but also to have a cushion for unforeseen expenses, without turning every repair into a financial catastrophe. Furthermore, a more modest house allows you to pay off the mortgage faster and start directing money into investments that actually create capital. Habit 5. Tracking expenses, your financial GPS. Most people keep a budget, but in reality, they just record expenses after the fact without analyzing them or changing their habits. When you start tracking every dollar, you suddenly discover $300 of extra spending per month. Forgotten subscriptions to services you don't use, food delivery fees, bank fees for accounts that should have been closed long ago, and impulsive purchases you've already forgotten. Use apps like Mint or YNAB to see the real picture of your spending and identify hidden financial holes. That $300 a month, invested at 10% per annum, will turn into $200,000 in 20 years, an amount that can radically change your financial life. Tracking is not about limitations and deprivation, it is about awareness and control. When you clearly see where the money is going, you get the opportunity to redirect it to truly important goals, such as investing in the future or creating a financial safety net. Habit 6. Invest raises before you get used to them. When people get a raise, after 3 months, their expenses automatically adjust to the new income. This is called hedonic adaptation. What seemed like a luxury becomes the norm. A $5,000 a year raise is $416 a month, which at 10% return will turn into $250,000 in 20 years. The problem is that most people don't even notice where this extra money goes. It dissolves into slightly more expensive restaurants, subscriptions, trips, and small improvements to daily life. After a few months, it begins to seem to the person that they never even had this money. As a result, an increase in income does not make them richer. It only increases the level of spending. Don't increase your standard of living, increase your level of wealth. Increase automatic contributions to your investment account before you get used to the new money. This money will work for you instead of disappearing in a stream of new spending. Over time, such decisions create a financial cushion that begins to grow faster than your income. This is how many people gradually move from living paycheck to paycheck to true financial independence. And most importantly, this transition happens almost unnoticed, simply thanks to a few right habits repeated for years. Habit 7. Index funds boring, but works best. Most investors, trying to outplay the market, get a return 3% lower than that of the S&P 500 index. This 3% difference over 30 years results in a loss of $500,000 for every million invested. Buy a low-cost S&P 500 ETF, for example, VOO, set up automatic contributions, and forget about it for 20 years. The main mistake most people make is constantly trying to guess the best time to buy or sell. But the market rarely rewards those who try to predict it. Much more often, those who simply stay in the game long enough win. Imagine two investors. The first constantly reads the news, tries to catch trends, and frequently buys and sells stocks. The second simply buys an index fund every month and doesn't touch the investments for years. After 25-30 years, the second almost always ends up ahead because their money works continuously and doesn't lose time due to attempts to guess the market. There is a simpler example. A person who invests $500 a month in an index fund with a return of about 10% can accumulate more than $1 million in 30 years. But if they constantly exit the market during drops and return later, their final capital may turn out to be hundreds of thousands of dollars less. Don't try to be smarter than the market. 90% of professional managers cannot consistently outperform the indices. Your task is not to beat the market, but to give time and compound interest the chance to do their job. The most profitable strategy for most people looks boring. Invest regularly, don't panic during drops, and don't try to guess the next hot asset. It is precisely this simplicity that often becomes the main secret of long-term wealth. Conclusion: wealth is built from boring but consistent actions. Marcus and Derek started from the same place. After 10 years, the gap between them is $329,000, and it continues to grow. All because one of them made small financial decisions every day, while the other just lived the way most people live. Start with one habit today. Not with 10, and not with an ideal financial plan. One right decision repeated for years is enough. In 20 years, you will be the one driving a used Toyota with $1 million in your account, while others will envy your secret of success, not even suspecting that it is just discipline and time. The truth is that wealth is rarely created by one big decision. It is created by hundreds of small choices: cooking at home, investing automatically, not taking unnecessary loans, and living slightly below your means. From the outside, it looks boring, but it is precisely this boring strategy that works best. At some point, compound interest begins to work faster than you earn, and then the money starts to grow on its own. If this philosophy is close to you, smart money, long-term thinking, and financial freedom without showy luxury, be sure to subscribe to the Sem Invests channel. Here we break down simple habits and decisions that can change your financial life over time. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss new videos. Perhaps one of them will become that very idea that changes your future.